Now, one of the more exciting stories that's come out over the last 24 hours or so, we all know the New England Patriots need that big-bodied ex-boundary wide receiver who can turn 50-50 balls into 80-20 balls, 90-10 balls, a guy with the speed to go over the top against the defenses, a guy that's also going to make life a lot easier for the many solid slot receivers that they have on the roster. And yeah, look, you're probably fine with Kendrick Bourne on the outside, but you really do need that big-bodied guy, which they've attempted to acquire for years, but they really haven't had a successful one since Randy Moss was with the organization. Well, A.J. Brown fits that profile better than just about anyone else. And we all know his size. We all know what he's done with the Philadelphia Eagles, what he did previously with the Tennessee Titans. And he has some interest in the New England Patriots. And apparently A.J. Brown is not very happy with his situation with the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of it is financial. A lot of it has to do with the trajectory the Eagles are going. They were one of the Super Bowl favorites heading into last season, and they kind of became very dysfunctional as the season went on, ultimately performed very poorly in the postseason. And A.J. Brown seemingly wants out. And he is a New England Patriots fan. He grew up a Patriots fan, has a little bit of a story where when the Patriots decided not to draft him, now Tom Brady was the quarterback at the time, grew up watching Tom Brady, was a big fan of the Patriots. He actually cried on draft day when the Patriots decided not to draft him and instead went with another big-bodied receiver who failed miserably, N'Keal Harry. A.J. Brown still is thinking about the Patriots, even though they are in rebuilding mode. And as of right now, as the roster sits, one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NFL. And Brown, and I know, like, this social media stuff, it's kind of silly, but it does move the needle sometimes, right? Stephon Diggs expressed frustration with the Minnesota Vikings. Buffalo Bills reached out and traded for him. Like, this stuff does happen in the NFL. So, yeah, take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean a lot. But A.J. Brown followed K.J. Osborne, the new slot receiver that the New England Patriots signed. Previously was with the Minnesota Vikings. Followed Jacoby Brissett, as of right now, the presumed starting quarterback for the Patriots. And changed his profile picture to Tom Brady on his X account or on his Instagram account. It was one of them. Might have been both. Well, this is giving Patriots fans some excitement, some hope, because A.J. Brown changes everything, right? You suddenly now can use Kendrick Bourne in a number of ways. You can use K.J. Osborne, Demario Douglas, both in the slot. You still have Juju on the roster. Not sure he would still be on the roster if A.J. Brown came, but they got weapons. They're pretty good at tight end, have a good running game with Ramondre Stevenson. Now they have Antonio Gibson, a real third down back. I'm sure they'll add another running back either through the draft or bringing Zeke back or somebody to add depth there. That's pretty solid. Offensive line still rebuilding, but Patriots have some pieces. They are just missing that X number one guy, which A.J. Brown certainly fulfills that role. And the New England Patriots have reportedly reached out to the Philadelphia Eagles about acquiring A.J. Brown. Now, the story is, Eagles, there's been a number of teams that have reached out about Brown, and they're all turning them down. But if this situation continues to transpire, A.J. Brown continues to be upset with the Eagles, I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots pull the trigger. Now, is that going to happen before the draft? I'm not sure. What would A.J. Brown require in terms of draft compensation? Well, he was acquired by the Eagles from the Tennessee Titans for a first-round draft pick. That's expensive, right? You're not going to trade the third overall pick for A.J. Brown. You're going to probably use that on a quarterback. Maybe the 34th overall pick, which is an early second-rounder, but it's basically a borderline first-rounder, and this is a very deep wide receiver draft. Eagles could draft a guy like Xavier Legette, maybe A.D. Mitchell slips. There's a lot of X-type receivers that they could potentially acquire if they were indeed to trade A.J. Brown, but it's going to require tremendous compensation. Now, Patriots perhaps could look to the future a little bit and trade some future draft picks, a future first perhaps, That's a lot, especially since we don't expect the Patriots to be a Super Bowl contender this year. They're probably going to have a very good draft pick heading into the 2025 NFL draft. So it would take a real package to make that happen. Now, Greg Bedard recently said he thinks and he knows a lot of people within the Patriots organization, he thinks this offseason there is a high probability that they will trade for a number one type receiver, whether that is an A.J. Brown, whether it is T. Higgins, who's essentially been on the trading block for the Cincinnati Bengals, was franchise tag. T. Higgins did recently say that he expects to be at Cincinnati, but we'll see how that ultimately transpires. Brandon Ayuk, San Francisco 49ers. There's a lot of these potential options. CeeDee Lamb in Dallas, if they don't want to pay him down the road. This is an option for the Patriots, potentially. And if they're willing to sweeten that deal a little bit, maybe you throw Matthew Judon in there. I don't want to see Judon go, but we know the Patriots defense is just fine without him out there. We saw that this past season. If you're willing to throw Judon in there and give a future second rounder, maybe that's enough to get a guy like A.J. Brown. I'm not sure. We'll see. But this would be very exciting, right? You now suddenly, for the quarterback coming in, he goes from having one of the worst receiving corps in the league to one of the best, because A.J. Brown, like I said, makes everybody so much better. And now these B+ receivers, Bourne, Douglas, Osborne, Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, these guys are going to be able to get open a lot easier because defenses are going to have to prepare every week to face A.J. Brown. It would move the needle, and suddenly the Patriots, I think at the very least, they're a playoff contender with a guy like Brown. Now, you got to figure out the quarterback position, obviously. You got to make the offensive line a little bit better. But look, if it takes giving up a guy like Matthew Judon and a second-round pick, whether that's this year or a future pick after the draft, I'm okay with that, because this is a guy who will change the culture in New England instantly and turn them into an explosive offense and put them back in the conversation, at least in the AFC East. And I would be very excited to see him. I'm sure most Patriots fans would. This is giving us a lot of hope, right? Now, we've all heard these conversations about Brown, about Higgins, about Ayuk. Now we're hearing about CeeDee Lamb. I don't know, but this is something I would expect the Patriots. I'm not saying they're going to do it in the next week before the draft, but teams are able to get these types of players via trade with a lot less compensation the closer you get to the season. Patriots got Randy Moss closer to the season. It could happen, or I think they got him around the draft. I think it was on draft day. But these types of moves do happen, and the Patriots would probably have to spend a little bit less to get a guy like A.J. Brown. And because A.J. Brown is a Patriots fan, I would expect them to be able to assign him to a lengthy extension and be willing to pay top dollar for that, considering they were willing to spend $22+ million for a guy like Calvin Ridley, who was not worth it, in my opinion. They were ultimately outbid by the Tennessee Titans. A lot of these guys don't want to come to New England. A.J. Brown does. So I would throw hell and earth at the Philadelphia Eagles in order to get this guy. Maybe it's a future round pick. Maybe not this next draft, 2025, but maybe 2026. And then if you need to throw Judon in there, or a third or a fourth, something like that, do what you need to do to get A.J. Brown, because it's going to make life a lot easier for the next quarterback, or for Jacoby Brissett if he's out there in week one, and would be very exciting. So that's it for this episode of Patscast. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Going to be a lot of content over the next week as we get closer to the draft, and certainly the day of the draft. We're going to have coverage after the first round. We're going to have coverage after the second and third round. We'll probably have coverage after the third overall pick, so the draft will still be going. We'll see if the Patriots trade back into the first round. There's a lot of cool things that'll happen. We'll be here.
In the land of Foxborough.